welcome into the very first episode of the Cougar Digest Podcast. I am Rob Sellers. I am the publisher of CougarDigest.com on the 247 Sports Network. I am entering my 15th season covering the Houston Cougars and have been involved in recruiting in high school even before that. And I am super excited to have this podcast finally get off the ground, something I've been hoping to get going for a while. And recently we've had a member join our team, Kevin, who has the smarts and brains that's been able to help push this through, as well as doing some other, editing and digital video work for us on the site. So I couldn't be more excited to be joined by Kevin. Kevin, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, Rob, appreciate the kind words, really do. Kevin Jasso, I've graduated of the University of Houston in 2005. I've been a member on Cougar Digest for probably about a decade now, maybe a little bit more. I got a passion for the University of Houston, just like everybody else on the site. So I reached out to Rob this summer. I have some experience with media production and just, hey, what can I do to help out? Rob was, obviously more than, willing to let somebody come in and help him out a little bit. But happy to be here, happy to be part of the crew, happy, to get this season started. We got a lot to talk about, before this first game.
Definitely, man. Exciting times right now, heading into an exciting season for the Cougars. Exciting times all around. Kevin joined, like he mentioned, great timing. Couldn't have been better for us. If you guys missed it over the weekend, we announced on Twitter or X, whatever we're doing this week, that we have partnered with Lincoln Cougs. They're launching their new subscription, monthly subscription donation package that they have options you can sign up for. And as part of that, we're basically going to be one of the perks or benefits you get from joining and donating to support the Cougar athletes that you guys all love and follow us to cover. So that's one very exciting thing we have going on. It was great to have Kevin involved so that we could also get this launched and talk about that. In addition, this week we'll be having a site special to kick off the season. It'll kick off on Thursday. 50 off an annual membership, 50% off an annual membership over there. So again, tremendous opportunities all around. Do your research, figure out where you want to jump in at. But regardless, I think Cougar Digest, once everybody gets there, we've had a great run so far, and it's only growing. Just really excited about everything, and great time for everything to be growing right now, heading into the Big 12 season. So really great show, this first one. We're going to get JJ Perez on here to talk UTSA, a big matchup for the Cougars to start the season, a dangerous team. Me and Kevin have been talking about it a bit leading in. Kevin, what do you think about this heading in?
About the game on this Saturday? There's obviously that's the big topic, right? A lot to be, I think, excited about. I think there's a lot to be concerned about. Like everybody else, I'm just ready to see what the product's going to look like on the field finally. It's been too long. It's been 8 months since we last saw them play a meaningful game, really. Just a lot of questions, a lot of things that I think that we just still need to figure out about this team. But excited. I think the talent level's there. I think the coaching is there. I think it's going to be a good game. I think we're going to pull it out, but I think it's going to be a good game.
True, definitely. And we're better to go for when you want to answer the questions that we have for UTSA instead of us, trying to decide what may or may not be their strong suits. We, of course, will reach out to JJ Perez. Like I said, we'll have him on the show next, and we'll be able to get all of our questions answered. JJ's a great guy we've worked with on the site before. Those that have been on the site probably recognize his name. So I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and get JJ in here. All right, here we go. Episode 1, the first guest on the Cougar Digest podcast. No pressure. Let's welcome in JJ Perez from the 247 Sports Network. He is our insider for the UTSA Roadrunners. He is at Inside Runner Sports. JJ, welcome, man. Obviously, we've had a history before on the site, and now we get you on the podcast. You're the first guest.
Appreciate it, guys. Excited to be on, opening the season again against UTSA in Houston. Last year was an exciting one. I'm excited to see where this matchup goes on Saturday night.
Definitely. It's going to be tough to kind of live up to that game after, in hindsight, the way it played out. And it stinks that someone had to lose that game last year in general. I know it's easy to say from the Cougar standpoint, fan base or whatever. But man, what a thrilling game it was. And for it to come down the way it did, I mean, like I said, it stinks that someone had to lose the game or whatever. But UTSA this year, me and Kevin and getting ready and stuff, we talked a little bit about what a dangerous opponent they are for Houston to open up the season. That UTSA, they obviously return a lot of pieces from last year, including obviously we talked about quarterback Frank Harris, the seventh-year super senior. And so they return a lot of pieces where Houston has added a lot of pieces that are probably an upgrade, but how quickly do they gel and fit and who grows quick? So, what do you think coming into the game after what you saw last year, knowing that Houston's, obviously losing Clayton Tune, a lot of offense, and Tank Dell? What do you think in terms of some of the keys of the game for UTSA?
Yeah, I mean, you look back at how the game played out last year, right? It was kind of a shootout, but UTSA wasn't as good offensively as we saw them be throughout the rest of last season. I think they were, among the top 10 in total offense for most of the year, but they couldn't run the ball against UH last year. And I think Frank Harris, you mentioned the dual threat quarterback coming back for a seventh year. It's kind of the coach on the field. So he's kind of does everything for UTSA, and he bailed out the Roadrunners a few times last season. And honestly, the Roadrunners probably felt like they let one slip away last year to open the season. And this is a completely different matchup. It just UTSA returns a lot of guys, but they also lost their top producing wide receiver to the portal. They lost their center. They look completely different at running back. So they are deeper at tight end and offensive line. But, Houston's completely different too. They got a whole bunch of transfers. You mentioned the loss of the quarterback wide receiver combination that was so good for the Cougars last year. I mean, are the new guys better? It seems like they could be, so I think it's going to be a lot of excitement this Saturday night in Houston. And I don't know, man, I don't know how it's going to play out, but for the Roadrunners, I think the key is just, they're starting in the trenches, trying to get that defensive line blocked. That's going to dictate how that game starts and plays out. And UTSA wants to run the ball. They got two really good running backs, and a lot of attention gets paid to the quarterback and the wide receivers, but they want to run the ball behind that offensive line.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned I think, like you mentioned, the Houston defensive line is going to be probably one of their deeper spots on the squad. Right. Coach Brian Early's done a good job there, and he's real big about kind of fitting his pieces here and there. But you mentioned just the excitement, and really, I've said the same thing. It really could have gone either way last year. Truthfully, either team could have won that at any point, and it would have felt justified. So you mentioned also the loss in the transfer portal. I imagine it's the same pretty much at every program. I mean, UTSA is going to shop the portal just as easily as Houston is, looking for guys that want to either come back home, come back to the state. Have you seen pretty much the same thing on your end as far as transfer portal? They're really digging.
Yeah, this is the fourth year for UTSA under Jeff Traylor, and I mean, really, it's been a net positive gain for UTSA in the portal. A lot of players have decided to want to come back home to Texas. These guys go to big time programs and they don't know how it's going to be, and they end up wanting to come back. Then you get a guy like the running back Rocco Griffin, who played at Vanderbilt against SEC defenses, and he wanted more of a little bit of a showcase, and now he's here. UTSA's been real fortunate in that they've only lost one guy to a Division I, transfer to the portal, and that was Zakari Franklin this last season to Ole Miss. So it's a huge loss. They're going to have a hard time replacing him. I mean, that was a lot of production from last year, and it's probably going to end up being by committee at least. And I mentioned the tight ends a little bit, and I think they're going to end up playing a lot of two tight end sets because of that hole at wide receiver this year, at least to start, until you see some of the new guys step up. There's a pair of freshman wide receivers that people are raving about, a kid from Houston out of North Shore, David Amador, who's really impressed in camp. So, but he's a freshman. It's one thing to do it in the fall camp and spring setting, but it's a whole different game when you come up against a Big 12 opponent to start the season. So, the excitement's there. They've been very fortunate in the portal, and they just want to continue building on that.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of similarities, and even this morning at media availability, the Dana Holgerson touched on the similarities between the two programs. Obviously UTSA has only been around 13 years, but they've just lately with Jeff Traylor, similar to Houston, being able to hold off and hold on to coaches sometimes when other bigger programs want to come poach. He mentioned the fact that they had moved from back-to-back Conference USA champs. Now they're moving to the American, like Houston moved up. I mean, a lot of similarities, whether people want to admit it or not. And I think similar recruiting paths in terms of they're going to try to hit the hotbeds in the state. They're going to look for those kids that want to come back home from other programs, like you mentioned. And there's a path there, to find competitiveness and continue to better your program. So just a ton. I feel like there's a ton of overlap between these two programs, even though, I mean, Jeff Traylor's done an immaculate job over there. He really has, and props to him. I know a lot of Cougar fans that always have their wish list down the road, where it may be type deal, however, have him on their list because they feel like he's done such a good job early on over there.
Yeah, the programs actually mirror each other quite. I mean, it's eerily similar, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the moving to the AAC and moving to the Big 12 are two different paths, right? But it's a lot of the same challenges. I mean, it's a step up in competition. It's the resource battle. I know the budgets, all that stuff, the facilities. I mean, you talk about NIL. That's a big push right now. UTSA is trying to get their recruiting budget up. They're trying to get an indoor facility funded to try and. So it's you're going against the who's who guys, and you're trying to just keep up with the Joneses.
It's the arms race that is become, and at every level, no matter what level you're at, it's keeping up with your Joneses, so to speak.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And as same thing with Houston moving up and realizing a lot of the fans asking, what's the difference? What's the biggest difference? Size, a lot of times, just overall size between the two levels, and really depth. The depth you're able to build at a Big 12 program, and vice versa. Each step down below, as you guys probably know, their offensive line is one of the tougher spots to get. And then it works. It's inside out type deal. Where tackles are definitely hard at every level to get, and so. It's good though. I personally, I've loved the UTSA games. I hope they keep them going. It's one of those. It's a great little in-state trip for fans. Who doesn't want to go to San Antonio for a weekend type thing? Fans love it. Vice versa for you guys coming over. Who doesn't want to go to Houston for the weekend? Spend some time and see some of the sights and all the cuisine and whatnot. So
yeah.
What do you think about the game on Saturday, JJ? What are a couple things you need to see to go right for UTSA to be able to win on the road?
Yeah, it's one of those games where the matchup certainly, I think it dictates the style of play is going to dictate Houston. I mean, UTSA is pretty stout at home in the Jeff Traylor era, and they struggle on the road a little bit, playing in the elements. Playing away from their friendly confines of the Alamo Dome. It's air conditioned, climate controlled. You don't have a lot of those settings across college football. And to be honest with you, it's probably gonna be warm Saturday, most of the first half at least. And you guys are gonna have a pretty good home field advantage there. So all of those elements, I think UTSA is gonna need to be able to get off to a fast start. Control the line of scrimmage, at least don't let the D-line dominate, and get some kind of run game going. Like I said, I think UTSA only had 30 yards of rushing offense from their running backs last year in the matchup. So that kind of changed the whole flow of how the game looked. And, to be honest with you, UTSA's got a new offensive coordinator this year. First year OC Justin Burke took the reins for the bowl game against Troy. And the offense didn't look great. There were some key personnel that was out. That was a really good defense, too. I think that was a top 10, 15 defense last year when they played. And, they have something to prove a little bit that, this offense can still be as potent as ever. So we'll see how the Roadrunners come out. And those are some of the things that I think UTSA needs to do, at least early on, to get the momentum going. But I feel like, it's going to be a real close game. The odds makers actually think they have UTSA as a 1-point favorite at this point, which is shocking to me. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's just a lot of people don't know what to expect. Like I said, you
Yeah.
get 40 new faces. Same on it's tougher and tougher. And I keep saying that this preseason, it's tougher and tougher for people to prognosticate what exactly is going to happen. Just because, again, there's just so many new faces. And you mentioned another mirror. Houston brought in Iman Nagavi, the new offensive line coach, specifically for the reason to improve their run game. And they're the same way. Dana Holgerson of old is not the Dana Holgerson of current. He's going to want to try to establish that run game the same way. So, again, another mirror. Who's got the test of the wheels on Saturday? Who's going to be able to win those battles in the trenches early? And then, of course, who can withstand the swings and the ebbs and the flows of the game, so to speak. So, I don't know. I hope we're in for as exciting of a matchup this year as it was last year. At least it was entertaining, regardless of which side of it you ended up on. But at least it was entertaining for everybody that paid to be there. What do you think, Kevin?
Yeah, I'm like you guys. Like, I don't know what to expect out of this game. I expect it to be a good game. I expect it to be a hard fought game. And that was one of the questions that I had about UTSA was with the loss of Will Stein to Oregon. I mean, that's a big loss. I think it just goes to show how well he did as an OC for Oregon to pick him up, right? And that was the question that I had was, about Justin Burke, and what that transition was going to look like, on the offensive side from that loss of Will Stein. Are we going to see, you mentioned last year about the run game. I believe they had 41 yards running. Everyone other than Frank Harris. Frank Harris accounted for 400 total yards out of the 441 yards. So Burke obviously has a weapon to work with. Yeah. So I was curious about the transition. What is that offense going to look? I mean, obviously everything runs through Frank Harris. But what other options are they going to have at this point?
Yeah, the good part for UTSA is that Coach Burke has been a part of the program since Jeff Traylor came in different capacities, special teams coordinator, tight ends coordinator. They they game plan by committee, so all the coaches are kind of really involved. It's just really now he's the actual play caller, and this is the first time he's going to be doing that role in his career. So I don't know that anyone knows what to expect. The spring game was pretty vanilla. They've kept things under wraps for most of the fall. And a lot of the offense is the same as far as personnel. So I wouldn't expect nothing new from a standpoint that, now we're going to see a completely different scheme. But they're going to be spread, multiple offense, and they're going to want to do their turbo, hurry up stuff when they get some momentum. But that question remains to be seen. We don't know what kind of OC Justin Burke is just quite yet, and that's one of the key storylines to watch this season for the Roadrunners. They got a tough non-conference schedule to start, and then they get into the new AAC play after the first 4 games, and a lot of people are going to be watching. How does this offense look? How does it compare to the same offense with the same personnel as last season? Can they continue? Last season was record-breaking offense performance for the Roadrunners, and there's a lot of pressure and expectation for that to continue. And some of that might not be fair. It's another Frank Harris has more miles on him than ever before. He had a crazy offseason where he had his knee scoped. He had it infected. He almost decided to retire. He came back. He rehabbed. They went in and cleaned up his knee under a new doctor. So it looked kind of touch and go there for a minute, and now he's back. So everything's looking up and up for the Roadrunners ahead of this season.
Yeah, that story kind of took everybody by surprise. It's been kind of the talk, when we walked in the media room this morning, getting ready for the press conference. A couple people had brought it up, and yeah, I mean that was a heck of a story, and B, for him to overcome that and fight so hard just to get back for this final season. And man, what a mature, like you said, coach on the field. You can't use enough cliches for a guy like that. But what do you think ultimately? I know we did this also in the behind enemy lines piece that'll be on our sites later in the week. But what do you think? How do you see it playing out? What do you think? Any predictions or anything like that?
Yeah, I do think we see a close back and forth game. I think the team that makes the least amount of first game mistakes. Coach Traylor said something today that stuck with me. Like this first game is kind of the most unknown, right? You
Yeah.
don't you kind of expect the most mistakes out of the first game. I think if you remember last year, UTSA had a 12 men on the field on a 4th down punt.
Right.
That was kind of key in forcing one of the games in one of the overtime. So the team that makes the least big mistakes in key moments, I think, is going to end up, winning this one. I think Houston having the home field advantage is going to be just enough. And I like the Cougars in a 1-score game, kind of late. I don't know if it'll be dramatic, like a game-winning field goal or something, but I do expect this thing to go down to one possession all the way down to the end. And we're all entertained for week 1 of this college football season we've been waiting so long for.
Exactly. I know everyone got a taste last weekend, a little bit of college football out there, but for sure, full steam ahead this weekend. So, JJ, man, I can't thank you enough. You officially will be the first ever guest on the Cougar Digest podcast,
Awesome.
hopefully for a long run. Before we let you go, man, tell everybody where they can find you, social media, website, anything you'd like to share, they can find your stuff.
Yep. Online at InsideRunnersports.com. On Twitter, I'm at the JJ Perez. You can find everything linked there. Interviews throughout the week, depth chart when it comes out, football notebooks, anything. You guys, all your subscribers get access to our board and vice versa. So there's a lot of good stuff out there. Be sure you guys check it out. And I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm excited to be there on Saturday.
Absolutely. You're going to come in for the game?
Yep, I'll be there.
Wonderful. We'll see you. We'll make sure and swing by the press box and see you and say hi and all that. I think me and Kevin are going to be down on the sideline during the game,
Awesome.
But we'll make sure and swing by and say hi, man. Thanks again for coming on, man. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, there you go, JJ Perez. Thank you very much for JJ coming in. Obviously, a tremendous asset for us to have at our disposal, especially in a week like this, playing a team like UTSA. You guys make sure and go check JJ out on the site, on Twitter, everywhere. Support him for the hard work he does. And a lot of good points JJ brings up. It brings us, to feed off of what he left off with. Just important parts of the game for Houston to be able to come up with a win in the opener this Saturday. Kevin, what are some things you're thinking about? I've got a couple as well, but, why don't you lead off? Tell me some things you're thinking about that Houston needs for them to go right this Saturday to come away with a win.
Again, a lot to consider for this game going into week 1 with all the, new faces, lots of talent, but a lot of new faces also at the same time, right? And JJ, thank JJ again for the great insight coming in and offering information on UTSA, some things that maybe we might not know about. Some of the keys that I think to this game is it's going to be obvious, right? Number 1, Frank Harris. You have to contain Frank Harris. Went off for 400 total yards last year, 4 touchdowns. He was the offense. When you look at the numbers, he was the offense. Everyone else, 41 yards. So, number 1, you can't let Frank Harris go off like he did last year. You just can't let it happen. Another key that I think to this game is penalties. Going back and it was a theme throughout the year last year, right? It was, this team was really good at shooting itself in the foot, and it was really its own worst enemy most of these games, right? But even last year, the very first play, for us from scrimmage on offense, it was a holding call. So you're already starting out 1st and 20. That was your very first offensive play after all that, after all the waiting, after all the practice, after everything. You're starting 1st and 20, so you got to limit the penalties. We had 11 in the game last year. You got to cut that in half immediately. And you can't let a good team with a good offense like UTSA, you can't keep giving them the ball, and you can't keep shooting yourself in the foot. Penalties, I think is another key. And then it just comes down to coaching, UTSA, they have a lot to be confident about. They 2 back-to-back conference championships, right? It's Conference USA, but as we know, it's not easy to win a conference championship
At any level. True.
It isn't at any level, right? So I think it's going to come down to coaching also. Jeff Traylor, nationally, everyone respects the guy. Everybody knows he's a good coach. He's going to have this team ready. He is going to have this team confident. And I guarantee you, UTSA is coming into TDECU believing that they're going to win the game. I honestly believe that. Okay. So I think coaching is going to be big. Can Coach Holgerson get all these new pieces, playing as a unified team before game one, or at least enough to get them through the first game. I have faith that we will. I have faith that the talent will rise. I think we have good depth at many positions, but it's just going to come down to, are we ready?
Yeah, and it brings up a good point as you talk about coaching. It feeds kind of off of what JJ was talking about. Similar staff, not much turnover either way. Houston changes offensive line coaches, which should affect their efforts in the run game, and UTSA switches their OC. So, kind of both important factors in terms of how each offense is going to perform this year. And like I was talking about a while ago with JJ, both teams, they want to establish that run because everything else can feed off of it if you can get it going early. So, I think you hit the nail on the head in the penalties. I think you hit the nail on the head with last year. I don't know, without looking it up off the top of my head, where they ended up in terms of number of penalties last year. I don't think it was an egregious amount over or above anybody else. But their ability to absolutely get a penalty at the wrong possible time, it was snake bit almost. It really was. And you would just be like, your first holding penalty of the whole game comes on a key critical third down or something type thing. And you're just like, of all the points for that to happen or a false start when you're really in critical time. Again, last year's game, credit to UTSA, regardless of the conversation on piped in or not piped in on the sound last year. That was a great atmosphere for football. And, UTSA, they've got a good thing going over there. And I mentioned the similarity. So, true. And so I agree with you on quarterback play. It basically comes down for me, quarterback play on both sides of the ball. Can the coaching staff at Houston do a good job of taking it easy out of the gate and getting Donovan Smith some early plays early to get some confidence built up? Don't get anything crazy out of the gate, but you also want to take advantage of that skill set that he does have. So you got to find that happy medium, get him maybe throwing some easy passes early, get a little bit of confidence going. Don't jump in too fast. But with UTSA, you can't afford to play around some more. So for me, the quarterback play comes back to a lot of the offensive line. Can the offensive line give Donovan Smith back there a little bit of time? Can they let him be young for a few series? And he's got experience. Let's not act like he's a freshman coming in or even a guy that's been sitting for a few years. He started some games. He's got Big 12 experience. He's got the most experience on the team. And I think it shows, and that's why he kind of walked away with the starting job in the summer. But if they can allow him to get some confidence early, give him a little bit of time to operate back there, he will improve as the season goes on, but you don't want to do too much with him and ask too much of him early on.
Rob, you bring up some really good, that's really good about Donovan Smith. He has the experience also. A lot of the talk about this game is obviously the quarterback play with Frank Harris and Donovan Smith, which one is going to obviously perform the best. And that might be the real key to the game. Which one performs best? Can we limit the turnovers? Can we get some turnovers? But good points about the quarterback play. All right, Rob. Well, final thoughts on this weekend. Final thoughts on this game.
Definitely. I think it's a good point that JJ brought up about the weather. Obviously, fans start drinking some water now before we head into that point.
Start hydrating. Yep.
Start hydrating. Do the best you can in the game. But I think the weather's will play a factor. We had a player parent come on the board this week and just kind of say they did push a bit in the summer outside and push these guys a bit at times to really, make sure they're prepared. I don't know for sure. JJ brings up the fact they play in the air conditioning over there at the Alamo Dome, but I think the weather's going to play a little bit of a factor. By all means, these are Texas kids, a lot of them at UTSA, so I don't think by any means they're just going to be overwhelmed by it. But I think Houston maybe has done a little bit better job preparing for the heat, what they're going to expect. I think Houston does it, kind of like JJ said. I think the home field this year gets it for them. I feel like they more and more, as you come away from last year, they stole one last year in San Antonio that easily could have gone either way. So I think the home field, I think at this point in the season, I think I've heard enough. We don't know. We know what we know until the ball snapped and we get things going officially. But I think Houston's done enough to be able to compete in this game and then close it out late when it matters.
I completely agree. I think if we can, And I think we could do it. I think if we could hold UTSA under 21 points, we'll win this game. I won't say it's a runaway. We're not going to win this game by 3 touchdowns, but if we can hold them under 21, I think that gives us really. We'll win the game. Okay, but we have to hold them under 21 points. That's my final thoughts.
And this is probably the most unknown going into the season that I think we've been. To be honest with you, just in recent history, I can't think of another time. Obviously, the transfer portal has created what it has created, but just unknown in terms of all taking over for spots and what they're losing. So I think we've said about all we can say other than the official, let's put the ball down and see how it plays out. So, man, I would say a big success for episode 1. I can't thank Kevin again for what he's done to help get this rolling, for his work, his support, his urging for me to go ahead and do this. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Tune back in for a second one. We'll constantly be moving things. We'll have new guests each week. And, man, I think it's going to be fun. I really do. Thanks again for everybody for joining us.
I do too. Remember to like and subscribe. Keep watching. Keep checking Cougar Digest for the latest information, not just UH athletics, but recruiting news also. Because let's not forget, that's what we're here for is to report on the recruits and the recruiting process, as well as reporting on UH athletics. But show up to the game, be loud, support this team. They need you.